Well, welcome to the Church Answers podcast. My name is Jess Rayner. I am here with my dad, Thom Rayner. And Dad, I got a question for you as we start off today. Do you know what the second Friday of the year is called?
Um, Second Friday of January.
Second Friday of January. It has a name. Do you know? Do you know what it's called?
Jan Fry.
No.
Fry Jan?
What?
Fry Jan?
Yeah, you're not even close. It's called Quitter's Day. Do you know
Is
that?
it really? Is it really? Boy,
It's
that's
called Quitter's Day. And I,
and
I I assume you can deduce why.
yeah, all the New Year's resolutions.
hmm It said by the second Friday of the year, the vast majority of all New Year's resolutions have already been quit upon.
Hmm.
And so it's called Quitter's Day. That's
Well,
when everything stops. They quit.
that makes me feel good because I haven't even done mine.
So you haven't even started your New Year resolution, so you
I
can't
haven't.
quit them yet.
I haven't even formulated it.
Hey, that's one way to get past Quitter's Day.
Yeah,
Uh,
just don't say you're gonna do anything. Just say, hey, I'm out of here.
then you can't quit. Okay,
Right.
I don't know if that's a good logic or not, but it's Quitter's Day. People quit most of their New Year's resolutions by the second Friday of January, but most people don't want to quit. They just quit because they stop doing it. They just get back in their old habits. Um, they're not thinking about quitting. It just happens. But today, here on the Church Answers podcast, we are actually talking about quitting, but we're talking about when it's not time to quit. Specifically,
That is a great segue. Congrats.
well, thank you. Thank you. I worked about 30 seconds on it. So when do we not quit? And so today we're talking about pastors, and we're talking about church leadership. We're talking about when do you call it quits to when you not call it quits? When do you know it's time? When do you not know it's time to quit? And how do you know to keep going? And so this is a topic that, maybe it's, since we're towards the beginning of the new year, there are some
Yeah.
pastors kind of wrestling through this. Is God calling me somewhere else? Am I supposed to stay here? If I finish my race, with this part of finish, I should say finish my journey, this part of the race, not finish the whole race here. And so we're going to be talking about what it means to not quit when it's not time to quit. And so we have six different things, six different reasons to think about before you quit, and when to ask the question when it's not time to quit.
And I've got a time not to quit.
Okay.
If you haven't signed up with Cheney and Associates yet,
Hey.
don't quit Cheney and Associates. And let me tell you why. Among other things,
Okay.
among other things, Cheney and Associates has been around for quite a while. They serve only the church, and they're the best. But here's what's happened: another accounting firm has quit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Their name is Bench, and not only have they quit, not only has that company quit, it's closed down. You can't even access the website there. So we got all these customers who used to be a part of the Bench system that cannot get to their records. Cheney's accepting all of those who need help right now, and they know exactly what to do to get you out of your mess, to get you over to them. So I would just say, since Bench quit, Cheney won't. How's that sound?
I like it. I like it. So yeah, if you are have been with Bench, if you're listening to this, you're a church leader, you've been using them for your accounting services, go over, look at Cheney Associates. They're ready. They're willing. They're eager to help you. And even if not, if you're, a church leader and you've been thinking, hey, maybe 2025, we need to get going with some accounting service, check out Cheney Associates. And I like that. They won't quit on you. That's not a knock on Bench at all. That's
It
just,
is. They close the doors. It is a
well,
total
it's
knock
not
off.
meant to be a knock on them at all, but
Yeah.
it's just in line with our topic today.
Okay,
Um,
you didn't knock, I did, and I'm just saying Cheney's the one that's going to be around for the long haul. So we want all of our customers to go to Cheney, whether they were at Bench or not. So that's my
right.
point.
That's right. That's right. All right. So let's look at six different reasons that might surprise you. You may not have thought about when it's not time to quit. We're going to start with this first one, and it's when we lack clarity from God. That's
The
a big, ambiguous statement. Can you break that one down for us?
No. Next one. No. when I say you lack clarity from God, there is still confusion that might be going on. And you are just saying, I cannot get close to the will of God on this in terms of what I know to do. And it may be that God is only pushing you to the next step. You don't have perfect clarity about what is beyond that. But there are many times that we're quitting circumstantially. We're quitting for human reasons, and those human reasons may be good. But I've known of people who've had human reasons that contradict each other. In fact, I've had human reasons: one that says I should, one that says I shouldn't. And
Mhm.
so I wait on God. And no, I don't get an audible voice. I don't get handwriting on the wall, to use Old Testament metaphor. I don't get that kind of clarity usually, but I do wait on God, and God usually begins to show me things that will say, okay, you might want to move in this direction. So maybe we shouldn't say when we lack clarity from God. Maybe we should say when we haven't even gotten a nudge in which
Mhm.
direction to move.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a better thing to do.
Yeah, and you're talking about seeking clarity from God, knowing the will of God, understanding what your next steps are. I mean, whole books have been written about that. Do you have a, I don't know, your own method, your own way of kind of determining what's God saying, what is His will? How do you seek clarity?
Well, most of the time, if it is a biblical issue and I have a biblical passage that says do this and don't that, that's pretty easy to do. But
Sure.
but sometimes there are biblical passages that may seem to point us in one direction and may seem to point us in another direction. So one of the things I do is I ask wise people about, hey, what do you think? I'm thinking about this. Tell me what you're thinking about. I don't know how many conversations you and I've had, your brothers included. We're
Hmm.
talking about next steps, what we should do. And we're asking people that we trust, people that if we don't have perfect clarity from the will of God, it may be the clarity can come a little bit more from someone else. And so if I'm reading my Bible and I'm praying, I still come away and say, I just don't know what's next. I need to go talk to some others. I need to see if anybody can see things about me I cannot see myself that would point me in a certain direction.
Yeah. For me, there's two ways that I often do this. One, I learned from Dr. Brad Wagner. He talks about a push and a pull.
Mm-hmm.
That when anytime in his life, in his past, and again, this isn't fail proof, but he often sees both of those elements when God moves, that there is a pull to where you are being called to go next. Simultaneously, there's a push away from where you are. And he often says that when God is changing and when you're seeking clarity, God will reveal both of those things. That you'll feel because a lot of people too they feel a push away from where they are. Oh, I just got to get out of here. I just got to move, but they really don't have any direction about the pool of where God's leading them. And so having this clarity on both sides of it, you may not have all the answers, but at least you have a general direction between the two. So that's one of two ways that I often seek the clarity of God. The second thing that I do, and actually, my wife and I do this a lot. We call it this, if it'll make sense. We try on both answers.
Mm,
We actually sit in it. We go, all right, God, you're telling us to do this. Maybe it's between two options. We'll sit in it, and we'll actually like kind of mentally go there,
mhm.
spiritually go there. All right, God, we're gonna sit in this. Is this what you want us to do? Then we'll try on the other one, and we'll sit there and go, did we get clarity from either one of those circumstances about trying on a yes, trying on a no? That has actually been really helpful for us as well, and
Good.
a lot of our decision making, trying to seek the will of God.
Hey, as we talk about this, I'm just relating to my relationship with Dr. Wagner. There have been four times that we have interacted about a push and a pull where I'm trying to get him to come somewhere or he's trying to get me to go somewhere. And we both had a push and a pull. So that's a total of four times two, one push, one pull, eight times that I can identify the push and the pull. The first one was when he asked me to come be interim pastor at Far Hills in Dayton, Ohio. The next time was when I asked him to become dean at Southern Seminary. The next time was when I asked him to become executive vice president at Lifeway. And the next time when I said, come and join me on the church answers team. So we've actually practiced that. And
That's
he
good.
told me to push and pull in all those situations.
Yeah.
And likewise.
So maybe if you're sitting here, if you're listening to us, maybe you're watching us on YouTube, and you're thinking, well, is it time for me to, you know, quit? Or is it more time for me to move on to what God's called me to do next? Look for the clarity from God. Pray for the clarity. Seek wisdom from others. Look for that push in the pull. Try on those answers. If you don't have that, then maybe again, I'm not the Holy Spirit in your life. We are not that, but maybe it's a moment to pause before you do step away and seek some of those things. So that's our first reason. When it's not time to quit is one, when you don't have clarity from
When you
God.
don't hear
Now,
from
the,
God.
the
Yeah.
second one might surprise you a little bit. It has to do with gratitude. So maybe it's not time to quit when you haven't expressed gratitude and joy to God for where you are now. Why did you add this one in?
Because I had two clear examples, illustrations that I thought of immediately. One was my own life, and for different reasons, I'm not going to mention the place where I was, but one of the reasons that I did not that I just wanted to leave was because I never had thought about the positive of where I was, what God was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny that I started praising God, started going to Philippians 4 and actually articulating, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice, started making that a part of my prayer time. And it was within a week or two, it's been a while, so I don't remember, that God began to show me through people contacting me how I had influenced them where I was there. And I hadn't even thought about that. So
Right.
that was one. Another one was a person, fellow pastor when I was in St. Pete. And his tenure wherever he was in the secular world and in his call to ministry was usually around 18 months in every place. And he was talking about it's time to leave again. It's terrible here. And I just looked at him. I said, "Hey," I almost gave his name. I said, "Hey, have you thought about thanking God for where you are now and all He's giving you?" "No, why should I?" He said. I said, "Well, I'm not going to answer that. Just do it." And he ended up seeing again a perspective of joy that caused him to say, okay, I am going to stick around. Here's the thing about it. There's no such thing as a perfect place to
Right.
be on earth. There's
Right.
no such thing as a perfect job. There's no such thing as a perfect vocation that checks all the boxes that makes us whimsically happy every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe we just need to rejoice in everything God is doing, even the tough times. And let's start rejoicing. That attitude can change our desire, or at least our perceived desire, to go in another direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that attitude can actually begin to change the culture. If you're a pastor or church leader, it can begin to change the culture of your church.
Yes.
One of the things that I feel like I'm very blessed with at the Church of Spring Hill is we do have a culture of gratitude and joy. It's not always
Yes.
perfect,
Yes, we do.
but there is that element of gratitude and joy, and I try and communicate that. I'm not perfect at it, but I try and communicate it often how grateful I am.
You
You
do
know, I
well.
I tell my congregation a lot, like I know how blessed I am as a pastor.
Yes.
And so when you have that kind of language, because again, it's not perfect. There are problems. There are challenges. At any church, we
Yes.
experience them here at my church. But when you just have that posture and you communicate that posture as well, I think that's really important. I learned something, and I don't remember where I learned it from. So it's not mine. I don't remember who it is, but it's taking time to actually stop and have gratitude. It goes something like divert daily, withdraw weekly, and abandon annually. I think that's how it goes. And so this idea of just taking time, one that's just time away and breaks and just needing time off. But if you can just divert daily and just take a few minutes every day and just write down what you're grateful for. It doesn't always have to be at your church that you're serving. It could just be in life, but developing that posture of gratitude. But if you do it specifically within your church, that might change the way you're thinking. You
Yep.
might say, "Hey, is this time to quit?" And you just stop and go, "Man, actually, yeah, it's got some challenges, but this isn't as bad as I think." Because it is. The negative is it just can get so heavy so fast.
Oh, the
Um,
negative can be so incredibly loud that from our perception, it drowns out all the things that God is doing. I'm not saying it should, but I'm saying we listen so carefully to the negative, we fail
mhm.
to see all the good things that God is doing in our midst. And so we don't listen. Therefore, we just say it's time to move on.
Right. Isn't it something like it takes 7 positives to reverse 1 negative? Is
I've
something
heard
out
that
there?
statistic for years and I cannot find the source of it. I mean, it's just one of those things. Hey, do you know within 17 seconds a guest has decided what your church is like just by the time they go into the parking lot? And I'm thinking, Who has got a stopwatch measuring 17 seconds to see someone's mind change? Yes, I've heard that. I'm just maybe there's a psychological study somewhere, but it makes sense. Okay, I'll just say it makes sense.
It does. Even subjectively, you
Yeah.
can kind of it does. It takes a lot. So taking some time and actually seeing the good in where you are. I think that can be really helpful too, because even if God does call you away from where you are, um, I think developing that posture will help you finish well. Because there's the potential, if you are just ungrateful, you're miserable, you can't find any good in the situation, you're not going to finish well. So I would say it's a good exercise. If it results in either you staying or you going, it's going to benefit you. So I love it that you put it on there, that
Hey,
you got to take some time to express some gratitude.
you know what the Rainerism is about constantly being negative. You have you heard it? You remember it?
Well, if it's a rainerism, I'm sure I've heard it, but I don't recall it.
It's a helicopter.
No, this one's new to me.
I guess you haven't been included. You're the youngest kid, and we just leave you out on everything. Your oldest brother Sam was 18 months, 24 months. I think it was before Art was born, and he just wouldn't get happy. He just wouldn't get happy. But we knew he loved to go look at airplanes, so we took him to the airport. We parked somewhere, and we could watch the planes go up and land and all that. And he's just still pitching a fit. We said, "Look, Sam, there goes an airplane." And he just in the grumpiest way said, "No, it's a helicopter." So his point was he wouldn't even agree that he was looking at an airplane, and he called it a helicopter. So that became a phrase that obviously we haven't used
Huh.
too much since then. That we just said, "No, it's a helicopter." That means that you're going to be grumpy no matter what, even if it's an airplane.
I've never heard that before.
I wonder if Art has. We'll have to ask. I wonder if Sam has.
So it's not
I know
quite a rainerism then.
I thought all of you had. Well, anyway, your mom and I talk about. We'll say she'll look at me sometimes. She said, "Oh, seems like it's a helicopter with you right now." Okay,
Mm.
that's
So
when
it
that means.
sounds like a marriage thing between you and mom that you guys
I
have
thought it was
used.
broader than that, but we'll see. We'll see.
Okay, okay, but it's true. But the point is there. Like if you can't find any good, then you need to pause before you say that God's calling you away. Um, to pause and get some gratitude. So that was our second one. It's not time to quit when you haven't expressed any form of gratitude to God. And again, maybe there's just generally nothing you're thankful for, but at least you can find something thankful in your life
That's right.
um,
That's
beyond
right.
that. This next one, I think is probably what drives a lot of people to think about moving on.
Oh,
Um,
I've been there, done that.
I of all the ones that we're looking at, of our six different reasons, I think the third one is probably the big one, and it has to do with critics.
Yep.
But we're talking about, when is it not time to quit? And when we say it's not time to quit, um, that's when it's just about a few critics.
And
Walk us through this one.
I would challenge someone who feels like it's time to quit because there's some critics out there, and you just feel like you're getting beaten up.
Hmm.
When you hear that phrase that from someone else is being negative, and they say, "People are saying," that is one of the weapons, if you will, of a critic.
Hmm.
I challenge them. Hey, I cannot deal with people are saying. I need specifics.
Hmm.
I need to go talk to them. I know. In fact, the last person that did that to me was actually someone that you know, but again, we won't say that. And he said, people are saying, and so I just stopped and I said, okay, we all know about this phrase. Who are these people, and what
Hmm.
are they saying? And I'll go talk to them. And
Right.
we pushed and pushed, and finally he admitted that he he was the people, and there were two other people that he had talked to about me, not them talking about to him about me, but he had talked to them, and
Hmm.
therefore that was the people are saying. He was the only one that was saying it.
Right. Right. Yeah. That you talk about critics in your church. That's an often used tactic. That, hey, people are saying this, and I use that too. I say, well, tell me who they are then.
Yep,
And usually the response is, well, I'm not at liberty to say. And I said, well, then you don't need to be saying people are saying, because if they have not given you permission to say, then you shouldn't be saying that they're saying it. And so and then again, if they are saying it biblically, your response is for them to tell them to come talk to me. And so
yep.
you shouldn't be saying this at all if you're not at liberty to say anything. So very quickly, I mean, you can kind of go back on a critic. I think though it's important that we're talking about critics. and you're thinking about, hey,
Yeah.
is it time for me to quit? Is it a few critics? The other side of this, though, and maybe you could break this down, is there's a difference between critics and toxic people.
Hmm.
There is a major difference between the two. I often say, I'll even just use it instead of saying a critic, just complaints. I think complaints are misplaced passions in the church setting. I really do. And some complaints are valid, that, and there's a right way to complain. And I love it when people in the church complain the right way. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I hear you. No, what, you're right. That probably is something we should look at. But it's also an opportunity to go, all right, this is clearly you have a passion about this. Can you help? And if they're not willing to help, then it pretty much shuts down the complaints right away. But there's a major difference between someone who's complaining or a critic and someone who is just toxic. How would
Yeah.
you describe the difference between that?
Well, this would be one way. It would not be the only way. I describe a critic as someone who usually has an issue, a single issue or a single person. A toxic person is in multiple places being negative, multiple people, multiple situations, and therefore the toxic person is spreading the negativity. The
Mm-hmm.
critic usually, especially a healthy critic, is focusing on one person or one issue, and it's not just everything is bothering me. We've all had toxicity in our churches and our organizations, and the longer you're at this, the more you'll recognize it, and the more you'll recognize that, hey, this is a situation where the person either needs to change or needs to go. And I'm talking about the toxicity. And every pastor will confront toxicity at some time. The pastors who do not confront toxicity are allowing one of the worst things in the church to continue.
Right. Right. So you got to look at it, if you're experiencing some kind of conflict in your church, is this a toxic situation? If so, that needs to be biblically addressed no matter what.
Right.
Even if you're leaving, that needs to be addressed before you would head out. For whoever the next leader is going to be. There's a responsibility if you're a church leader to address that. The other side of it is the criticism. Is it just one or two people? And then if it is, go talk with them. Sit down. I think critics, there's an opportunity there. I've had a critic in the past who became one of the greatest supporters. And there's usually a reason why. There's a passion there, or there's a hurt there. Sometimes they just need to be heard. So don't let one or two critics influence your decision and go, I've got to leave. I think when there's just a few critics, go address those. Go deal with those. Go see how you can wrestle with that, and then go back and say, all right, is this something that God is using to push me away? But make sure you address it appropriately first.
I'm thinking of the four churches where I served as pastor, not going to mention any one of those four, but the church that I thought was the most negative, the church that I felt like I got beaten up the most, the church that I felt like was a majority plus on critics. Over the years, I have had conversations with other people that weren't the critics. And somehow, if the conversation came up about it was a tough church, something like that, they say, really? I didn't know that. I didn't know that,
Hmm.
these things. So I'm seeing all the criticism come my way, and from their perspective, it's a healthy church, and I'm in a healthy situation. And if I had talked to some of those people, I probably would have had a much better attitude than if I had focused so much on the critics.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, if you're kind of wrestling with this right now, take some time, process this, and maybe you have, and that's after you process it. Maybe you're saying, well, yeah, no, I've talked to the critics. They still are criticizing me. It goes back to, well, is this borderlining someone who's toxic, or is it not? And then begin to process. Hey, God, all right, is this the push? Is there a reason for this? I feel like I've done everything I need to do. Again, seek counsel, and hopefully there's someone in your church too, a trusted, someone else you can go and just maybe be a soundboard. Be careful if it's someone in the church, but hopefully maybe there's at least someone. But if not, make sure you talk to someone outside of the church. So that was our third reason of when it's not time to quit. When it's, I would say, unprocessed critics.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
don't
that's fair.
don't let an unprocessed critic influence your decision in saying it's time to quit. Our fourth one of when it's not time to quit is when it's a season of discouragement and difficulty. And I think the
Yeah.
reason I'm gonna guess why you put this is because seasons end.
Hmm.
Okay.
Se- Seasons in, and some of these seasons are precipitated by where you are, like at the church, the vocation you have, like being a pastor. But some of the seasons of discouragement are external. They're not related to the church. They may be internal for you personally, but they're not related to the church or your vocation. But because you're going through a season of discouragement, you transfer that discouragement as a this is where I work as well. When in reality, you're having a tough time personally. You're having a tough time on other issues. And so that's one of the reasons. You just have to realize why, or you have to ask the question, why am I going through this season? Is it really the church or is it something else? So that's one of the things. But here's the reality. Every leader goes through a season of discouragement,
Hmm.
even at the place where they're leading, especially at the place where they're leading. I have yet to find someone who is 100% happy, happy, happy in the place where they are.
Right.
That's life. And the Bible's pretty clear on that too, whether we're talking about the Apostle Paul or we're talking about the great prophet Moses. The Bible is replete where these people had difficult days. They had these seasons, and it's part of God's the way He uses us and the way He wires us. And it's also part of the fall too, because there's just sin that's going to be in our midst at all times.
Yeah. Yeah. When difficulty comes, sometimes, and I do this in my life, and maybe if you're listening, this is something you do. Everything tends to kind of go in one big blob for me. It's kind of like, oh, this is happening, and all of a sudden it feels like every area of my life is affected by it. And so
Yep.
what I have to do is compartmentalize. I have to go, all right, this is happening in my life right now, and it's its own thing. This is happening in my life, and it's its own thing. And when you begin to kind of separate those out, you begin to see them clearly. And you might see that the season of difficulty where maybe where it feels like it's in church life, maybe it's not. Maybe there's something else going on where all of a sudden it's all bleeding over. And so take some time, and this kind of goes back to that gratitude, taking some time to process this. What are you grateful for, but also break it apart, because again, being a pastor is all consuming. It's 24/7.
It is.
And so it's very easy when you feel tension in your marriage, when you feel difficulties with parenting, when you have financial stress, when you have all these things going on, to make it feel like everything goes back to potentially your ministry. So break those things apart, look at it and identify what is the season, where is it coming from? And it may not be the church. It may be just stuff, other parts of life, but it could be the church.
It could, but
It
it's
could be.
still, but it's still you're identifying it. You know
Uh-huh.
what this whole podcast is about?
Say it again.
You know what this whole podcast is about?
When it's not time to quit.
Running away, running away. I'm trying to do a segue too, Jess. It's almost as good as yours.
Okay.
But I want to talk about our mid-roll sponsor for just a moment.
All right.
And it's Upward Sports. And the reason I'm talking about running is because that is their latest sport offering. They're introducing Upward Running. You and your brothers can get into this. Don't ask your father to be involved at all. But Upward Running is now being introduced. You can bring Upward Running to your church. You can host a 5K. They have a Run Club app. You can do a 10K and our marathon. Oh my goodness! Or what'd your brother do recently? How many miles did he run for that?
30. I think it was
30, and
30.
he's going to do a 50 coming up. I mean,
Yeah.
and he's the one that just keeps breaking legs and getting run over and that kind of thing. So anyway, this is a good thing though. Running is extremely popular, and Upward Sports is bringing that to part of their huge array of sports ministries that they have. And this is something that you can bring your community into with some type of running event. We love what's going on with Upward because they help us to get into the community. They help us bring the community to the church as
Hmm.
well. And if you're wondering how you can reach your community, contact Upward. Go to upwardrunning.com.
Hmm.
Upwardrunning.com. Now, do you think I did that segue pretty run away, running? So I don't want you to run away from Upward Sports. I want you to run to them. I
Hmm.
tried. I tried to.
Listen, A for effort. A for effort. Absolutely love it. It fits your age. It was good. Uh,
Ah, ah.
It's good. Yeah, but I do. I love that Upward is getting into running. That is something that continues to grow in our culture and American culture. And so, yes, and all three Rainer sons are running. I'm almost back after my knee surgery. I'm getting back into running. So
And for you listeners, our viewers on YouTube, he had to have knee surgery, pretty serious knee surgery. Why? Because he was running.
well, that was just the final straw that broke the camel's back. It was injured before that. It just happened to get
Snap, snap.
fully injured. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, to segue back, we are talking about deciding if you're running or not. If you're running away, if you're saying, "Hey, is it time for me to quit? Is it time? Do I feel that push? Do I feel that pull?" Um, we're talking about though, when do you not quit? And we're talking about the things that you need to do to process. Is this God saying it's time for me to go to another place? Our fifth one is it's not time to quit when the job is not done.
Oh, I did. I quit when the job was not done at Azalea Baptist Church in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Hmm.
Clearest example. I mean, again, I know that you were very young when you were born in '85, and I left Azalea when at 1990. And so even when I left, you were only 5 years old. So your memory is going to be vague.
Right.
But boy, God was doing a work. We were a church that I still remember the incoming attendance was 118. And the first year we had 77 baptisms, 77 with an attendance of 118. Second
Wow.
year was strong as well. Uh, it's hard to explain what was going on, except God was just at work. We were in this, we still is a vast unchurched county in Pinellas County. We were reaching people, and I felt like my ministry was just beginning, and I quit.
Hmm.
Why did I quit? I quit because I couldn't pay bills.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
quit because your mom was getting sick about our financial situation. I quit because I thought that was the only thing I could do is to find a church that could. The church was paying me adequately for a bivocational pastor. Let me put it that way, but
Gotcha.
not for someone who was supposed to be full time. And so I took another church, very frankly, just for compensation.
Hmm.
And it wouldn't be but a year later that I realized that the job was never done. I had just begun, and it wasn't just a matter of waiting on God. I could have gone to almost any leader in the church and told them my situation, and they would have said I had no idea, and they would have
Hmm.
rectified it. Pride was too strong, and the easy out seemed like the response I should have, and it was not.
Yeah.
The
And
job was just not done. We really had really just begun.
yeah. Well, for clarity there, I do think it is good for church leaders to provide for their family. And so if you're in a situation where you have attempted to work with a church in order to help, get the
That's the key.
necessary provision, your point was you never even attempted to work with the church to
Mm-mm.
help try and remedy the situation. You never gave it a shot. So some people may be in this position. They're like, I can't pay my bills. I mean, we are called to provide for a family. So I would say the main thing on this is you didn't try and work it out.
I did not. And numerous people after the fact, suspecting what had happened, came up to me and said, "Why did you not tell us something?"
Hmm. They
And
would have
so,
they would have helped.
and they were influential. There was basically one person in the church that kept the records, and he wanted to make sure that it was not out there. And I knew that was his motive. And he had no significant power in the church,
Hmm.
and I could have gone to anyone and done it, but pride,
Yeah.
too much pride.
Yeah.
But the
Well,
job wasn't done, is what I'm saying.
yeah. And so for a lot of people, I mean, the financials, it may not be an issue for them. The financials, the more is, what vision did God give you?
Hmm.
Um, how if you're still a couple years in the church, God gave you a clear vision for the church. Listen, there's an enemy at work, and maybe you just need to take some time. Again, it's all about processing where you are and saying, is the vision still there?
Yeah.
Is there just an enemy at work that has tried to divert, that has tried to discourage, that has tried to, take your eyes off the vision? Is it time just to get back to that vision? Did it connect with the hearts initially and it's just kind of faded away? Maybe that's what God is wanting you to do in this step. Maybe it's not time to quit. Maybe it's time to go back to the vision, or maybe this is a season where God is giving you a new vision for the church. I would highly encourage, before you say, "Hey, it's time for me to quit," go to God and say, "God, are you just in the season where you're giving me a new vision?" I remember very specifically, I was sitting in this very office, and I wasn't thinking about quitting. It was just like, just something wasn't right. And long story short, God just gave me a new vision for the church at Spring Hill. A vision that we've talked about for many years. The whole reason we exist is because people need the hope of Jesus, and that's been a driving factor of people knowing that there is hope in this world. And so, out of that season, birthed a new vision. So maybe the job's not done because God either wants you to go back to the vision He gave you already, or it's a season of new vision. So process that. Go to Him, pray, ask God, is there a new vision, or do we need to resurface the old vision before you say, nah, it's the job's done here?
And you do have to define what the job means. We can't define it for you. We
Right.
cannot assume that we know. But if you know that there's a job to do and you haven't finished it, then you shouldn't quit. Now, if you feel like your work is done and God is moving you on, so be it. But this is all
Right.
about when you don't quit.
Right. So that was our fifth reason. It's not time to quit when the job is not done. And so you need to know for sure that the job is done before you say God is calling you away. This brings us to our final sixth reason of when it's not time to quit. And I think you have to unpack this one a little bit more, because it's about a commitment. Because we all make commitments, but what we were saying here, it's not time to quit when a commitment has been made.
First point that I would make is be careful making promises, making commitments. Be careful. You may have a desire for something to happen and you articulate it and it sounds like a commitment. I'm going to give you an example of a pastor named Jess Rayner and what he has done.
Okay.
When I haven't heard you say it lately, but I've heard you say it several times. You say you hope that you are still leading the church when Collins, your youngest child, graduates from high school. But
Hmm.
you've been very careful to say that's your hope.
Right.
You haven't put it into the form of a promise. Now,
Hmm.
you would like to put it in the form of a promise because you love your church so much, but you cannot give them that promise. So you say, I hope to be here. And how old was Collins when you got there? I mean, how many years ago would this have been?
Well, she wasn't born when the church started. So um, yeah, it's 9 years.
Okay.
Yeah,
And if you stay there till she graduates from high school, that would be
9 more years.
9 more years. So
Yep.
be 18. It'd be 18 years. What I watched you do was express the love of the church, the desire at this point in your life and ministry to stay, reflecting much of what you and Rachel had talked about, but you did not make a promise. Now, if anybody from the Church of Spring Hill is listening to me, I'm not saying that he has said anything otherwise. I'm not trying.
Sure.
Don't read into that. It is just simply you did not make a promise, and that's the point I'm trying to make. If you're going to make a promise, you've got to make sure you've got to do everything that God can give you the wisdom and possibility to do that you're going to fulfill that one.
Right.
One of the examples that I think is pretty close to a promise is one of our um, clients at Church Answers by the name of Rob Paul, and he's gone into a revitalization situation at Huffman Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. That's very difficult. I haven't heard him make a promise or even an official commitment. He may have, but I know this. He is communicating very clearly. It's going to take a major move of God to move him out because he knows the work is not done. Going back to another promise, he also
Hmm.
knows that he didn't come in with a commitment to be there 18 months and gone. And I think he's probably in about his fourth or fifth year already. The work was not done. Going back to another one, again, I'm not going to put Rob in a position where I say I know he committed to it, but closest that I've seen of most pastors saying I'm going to stay here as long as I can.
So you don't recommend a pastor going and buying the cemetery plot and saying, "I promise I'll be here to the day I die."
No, I do not.
Okay.
I do
Okay.
not. But there's some situations. Here's another situation. if we do this building program, I'm going to see it through.
Right.
Now, there's a possibility circumstances will change, but within your human frailty, in God's strength, you're going to stay through that building program.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and
And,
go on.
and I think it goes back to, being careful with what you do say, because it's easy in the moment, just to make these promises that seem great, that get people excited. But if God is not giving you that vision, again, going back to what we were talking about before, if like, I promise I'll be here for 5 years, just to make people feel good, don't do it. If you're doing it in your human strength, these promises, don't do it. But if God has given you a clear 5-year plan for this church, and you, again, it's always good to give a little caveat. It's like, I believe God is calling me to this 5-year plan, and I want to see it through.
Yep.
It's just being careful with your words,
Hmm.
and understanding that, when people hear you say, I promise I'll be here for 5 years, they're going to believe you. And so if you have done that, you need to really go again. You hear a repeating thing from me. Go back to God, talk with them about it. And if you did say that, then my first prayer would be, God, give me the strength to fulfill my promise. If not, God, make it clear on how I move forward, knowing that I can't fulfill that promise.
Right.
And asking God for that clarity on that. So my first prayer would be like, God, I didn't make this promise. I want to be a man of my word. Help me fulfill that promise. So I think the two part is, be careful in making promises.
Yep.
But if you have made it, you need a plan for how you have to attempt, I think, to at least finish it, and ask God how you do. So if it's not time to quit if you haven't processed that part of it.
Let me, but before we close out this whole thing about when it's not time to quit, many times pastors do make commitments around building programs. I mentioned that real quickly
Right, right, right.
about 5 minutes ago. Um, Here's what I've discovered in the two major building programs of which have been a part: one in a church, one at Lifeway. Lifeway was pretty major. We sold the biggest plot in downtown Nashville that has ever been sold, and then we built a smaller facility a few blocks north of us. Here's the thing: the building program that we had in Birmingham, in a church, and then this one. I In my mind, I was thinking I need to commit to see these through, and I did both of them. I saw both of them through. But here's what I discovered later: they didn't need me to see it through. I had a
Mm.
inflated view of myself. I just both of them would have succeeded even if I had left. I didn't leave.
Right,
So just be careful with those things. Boy, they've got to have me.
right,
No, you might see it through, but be careful with those promises as well.
right. So if I could, again, repeat myself and kind of sum this one up, it's not time to quit if you haven't processed why you're wanting to quit.
Mm-hmm.
If
Well,
you haven't
6 months,
sat
we
down
come
and
back to that.
yeah, if you haven't sat down and just sought the face of God, and just prayed through this, is it just a season of discouragement? Is it a critic? Is it, how do process it? Just sit down and process it. Don't react. Make sure you have that push and that pull. I do believe in that. Again, this isn't for every circumstance. There's always going to be exceptions to the rule.
Mm-hmm.
We're speaking in generalities here, so don't take it as we know your specific circumstances. We're speaking in generalities. But if you haven't sat down and processed these things, God, where's the clarity? Is it critics? Am I a season of discouragement? Is it just you giving me a new vision? Have I made a commitment? Think
Right.
through these things before you say, "Hey, it's time. It's time for me to move on." And then to wrap it up, if God is calling you away, finish well. Finish well.
That's why you keep reminding me of my ancient status. Hey, Dad, you're almost done. Finish well.
I think you have a lot of great years of ministry left, and I love that God has you leading and being a part of Church Answers, and just the impact you're having. And so that's why we're here. We're here because we know that there are questions that come up about your church, and so we're hoping that we can come along and provide those church answers for you. And so, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation we've had today. If you're listening, just know that we're so grateful for you. We love it that you tune in. We love that you watch. If you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button, do all those things that all the fun streamers and things talk about. Do all that stuff. Interact, leave a comment. We're watching on YouTube, the comments, and so we'd love to interact. Post recording that we would love to interact with you as well. But we're super excited that you're listening with us on the Church Answers podcast. We hope today was great. Maybe gave you some things to process, and hopefully God works in you mightily,
And
whatever you're processing.
and don't forget, Cheney and Associates is one of those resources that we try to connect you with. You talk about an organization that does bookkeeping, accounting for churches par excellence. Is Cheney and Associates. Don't forget them. Uh, Maybe there's some things that you did not know about your bookkeeping. Many pastors learn that when they go to somebody that's highly qualified as Cheney and Associates. So that's our admonition to you. And again, if you've gotten caught up in the mess with the closure of bench, also contact them.
Right.
They can work with you on that.
Yep.
So just sign us off.
Yeah, thank you, Cheney Associates, for sponsoring today's podcast as well. So we hope today was helpful for you, and we look forward to catching you on the next episode as we continue just to dive into some of these questions that a lot of different church leaders have a lot of church leaders are having, and we're glad that we can sit here and talk with you about them. So thank you so much. We'll see you in the next episode.